Hello, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners. I'm Matt Matera. Joined with me is Adam Slavon of PewterReport.com. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties, so we'd appreciate it in the chat if you guys could hear us all right, if you're getting clear audio, and if you can see us okay, because we are doing it, kind of off the seat of our pants, really.
Yeah.
We just got here from Tampa, Florida, set up and tried to get this show rolling as quickly as we possibly could. So appreciate everybody joining us this afternoon. As Max says, we are good. The audio is okay. Appreciate you, the Pewter people, David Van Dunn as well, saying that you guys can hear us. So really appreciate that. Of course, the Pewter Report podcast is energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. Adam, we're going to roll with the punches. How are we doing now?
We're doing great. And like you said, an action-packed show. We're in Jacksonville, and we have 2 joint practices as well as a game on Saturday. It's going to be really exciting. A lot of the matchups between the Bucs and the Jaguars. If you check out PewterReport.com, you're going to see our latest story was our roundtable where we discussed what the Bucs must do against the Jaguars this week. Each of us kind of went over some different topics, but one thing's for certain, the Bucs need to kind of continue to get that ball rolling. On the offensive side, under Liam Cohen last week, they had 390 total yards of offense. And then on defense, you kind of saw those under-the-radar guys start to flash. So in Jacksonville this week, going to need to see a lot more of that.
Oh, yeah, agreed. I think it's more important for the Buccaneers as we kind of preview this start against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's way more for the Bucs still at this point, even though there was a lot of great things to enjoy about that Saturday night game against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
The offense needs to continue to build upon what they did. And I understand Baker Mayfield didn't play and Mike Evans, and the odds are they're not going to in Saturday's game. But, of course, they're going to get a ton of work tomorrow on Wednesday and on Thursday as well. Malcolm Harvey saying, I'll be at both practices Wednesday and Thursday.
Awesome.
That is very, very cool, Malcolm. Adam and I will be there. SR will be there. And our photographer, a very talented photographer, when you see a lot of our pictures on PewterReport.com and on this show as well, Cliff Welch. Cliff is there, too. And Cliff has been with Pewter Report really forever. So if you see him as well. And by the way, we got a super chat, and you know our rule. If you super chat us, we make sure we get to it right away. So thank you to Josh Weiss for this $9.99 super chat.
Thank you, Josh.
Who says, yes, thank you, Josh, who says, asking for a prediction. Who has the biggest leap from the 2023 class? Cansey, Mauk, Diaby, not the best statistical season, but biggest leap from a 2023 production. Josh, this is a really great question. And Adam, I think there's an interesting way to really break this down. And I'm glad that Josh brought up that maybe it's not necessarily a statistical thing that we can look at because, how do you compare Yaya Diaby's sack total to
Cody Mauk?
That's exactly who I was thinking of was Cody Mauk. But I really do think it kind of comes down to those 3 in the draft class. My initial thought, in all honesty and transparency, Cody Mauk, I think, may be the one to take the biggest step forward. And there's really no wrong answer.
Yeah.
This is really just our opinion. I think the weight and really just overall like body mass that Cody Mauk put on is super important. He had his ups and downs last season, but I think really started trending in the proper direction as the season went on. And when we spoke to Cody Mauk and Luke Gedeke as well, who obviously play next to each other on that right side, Mauk really expressed how important it was that he feels comfortable working with Luke Gedeke. And he said, I know where Luke's going to be at any given moment. And that helps his game so much. So when you include him going into year 2, but I guess you could say that about everyone, him working in an offense that's going to play to his strengths a little bit more. And it kind of reminds me of what Robert Hainsey was saying yesterday when we had him on Robert Hainsey's birthday as well.
Boy.
Happy birthday, Robert. Talking about how the strength of this offensive line specifically is how athletic they are and how they can move. And Cody Mauk, I think is, we automatically talk about Tristan Wirfs. That comes to mind. But Cody Mauk is also another guy that thrives getting to that second level. And that's what's going to be asked of him specifically.
I think you make a really compelling case for Cody Mauch. It wasn't who I was originally thinking of.
Yeah.
When you look at Cody Mauch, adding that 12 to 15 pounds of muscle mass, and then like you said, his profile is kind of based around that zone blocking. And you saw that at North Dakota State, him getting to that next level. When you look at that highlight reel, him just laying guys down like at the second level, those linebackers, I think that'll create a lot of mismatches and the ability for him to take advantage of it. And when you look at his rookie season, he did better than Luke Gedeke did in his rookie season.
No doubt about it.
And Luke Gedeke took a huge leap in year 2. So why can't Cody do the same thing and really become that next cornerstone offensive lineman? Who I was originally thinking of when looking at this question was Yaya Diaby.
Yeah.
Because you saw him in training camp, Matt. His muscles, they were already big. Now they're ginormous. And just his ability to wreak havoc. You saw that during the training camp practices the first 2 weeks, going up against Tristan Wirfs, giving him a tough time, giving Luke Gedeke a tough time. I remember there was one practice, he had 2 sacks against Gedeke. I think he's primed for a big year. I definitely think that double-digit sacks are well in play and that he's going to be that leader in the outside linebacker room.
Let me ask you, as Jeff the Champ, one of our PR members, of course, the new membership that we started out, shout out to Jeff the Champ, says, Yaya Diaby, Yaya Diaby. Well, let me ask you, appreciate you, Jeff, for being a Pewter Report member. Let me ask you, when it comes to Yaya, what's your concern level about this injury that he has? Because on one hand, he's not in a boot.
Yeah.
He's walking around fairly okay. Let's just not say 100%. But on the other hand, if Yaya doesn't come out of the gates flying because of that injury specifically, what does that entail for the rest of the outside linebacker room?
That's the problem there. And you kind of saw that in the Cincinnati game, where outside of Jose Ramirez generating 2 holding calls, the rest of the outside linebackers, you look at Chris Braswell, Marquise Watts, they really weren't generating that pressure. So for Yaya Diaby, if he doesn't come out of the gates firing, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the outside linebackers in the room, because Yaya is a presence that defense or that offenses have to account for. And if he's not 100%, I think he will be closer to that. He still has another month to really get in game shape. Right now, he's kind of walking gingerly, but it's encouraging to not see him in a boot. My concern level is low, but the next couple of weeks will be huge for him.
There's 2 more guys I want to talk about briefly as we kind of wrap up the super chat. And thanks again for that super chat. Remember, if you want to, we will get to your question or comment ASAP. But Kalijah Kancey, I think, maybe can make the biggest jump in terms of sack production. And, Yaya was at 7.5. So if he gets to double digits, that's fantastic. That is, the Bucs will take that all day. But that's still technically only a 2.5 sack increase. By the way, I think they should get rid of the half sack and just give, if there's 2 players on the ball or on the quarterback, just give it a full sack for each guy.
Exactly.
Like, why are we really nitpicking?
Yeah.
J.J. Watt was on the Dan Patrick show recently, and he was talking about that. And I fully agree. But I think Kalijah Kancey, let's remember, he was the defensive rookie of the month, I want to say later in the season, in November or December. I don't think we saw a sliver of what Kalijah Kancey can do. Now, he's missed the past couple of days of practice, so I am a little concerned about if we will see him during these joint training camp practices. Maybe it's more of a precautionary thing, but I think Kancey, because he's playing next to Vita Vea, because teams may have to double team Yaya, Kancey can really, I mean, as far as like defensive tackles coming out of the gate and already having a solid repertoire of pass rushing moves, that's not easy to do. No. But I think Kancey is kind of at the cream of the crop when it comes to that specifically. So now just another year, I mean, talking to him about watching film of other pass rushers, how much he's like starving to just get after the quarterback. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I'm very interested in this as well, as Glenn High says, we'll just say Glenn H. How about Payne Durham having the biggest jump? Payne Durham, Adam, has had a pretty damn good training camp so far.
He has. I want to make one more point about Kalijah Kancey, though.
Yeah.
With Kancey, I can see him making a big jump just based on him. Of the 3 that were mentioned there with Yaya and Cody, Kalijah has the most technique. And as you mentioned, the most, I would say, polished to his game. And you kind of saw that last year when he came out of, like, he entered week 5 was his first game, really. I mean, 11 snaps in week 1. but he hit the ground running. And for a defensive tackle, that says a lot about how polished you are and being able to compete with bigger offensive linemen. And then the comment there about Payne Durham.
Yeah.
Definitely see him being that number 2 tight end. And he's really made a lot of plays. And Matt, he's looked faster to me. A guy that ran a 4.87 40 time at the combine. He came into the league a little bit slow, but he looks faster. And I think that's a byproduct of him maybe playing more at game speed and being more comfortable. But then also he's 6'6" and like 260 pounds. So he's that red zone target. And establishing that relationship with Baker Mayfield, I think, is going to be critical for him. But with Mike Evans there as one red zone target, definitely see Payne Durham having more of a factor on offense and being that other red zone target.
No question about it. That red zone specifically, I think is where we'll see Payne Durham kind of do most of his damage. I really think we'll just see the damage from the tight ends in that area specifically. Since we just talked about sacks and the outside linebackers, I did get asked this question earlier when I was on the J&Z show. Shout out to Jay Retcher and Zach Blobner. Love those guys.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of conversation about Hassan Reddick, and we have a comment from Hezo813, who is another Pewter Report member. So we appreciate you for joining us as a Pewter Report member, Hezo813. Talking about Hassan Reddick, who says, can't afford Reddick. So that's obviously the big story that's going on right now. Hassan Reddick has requested a trade from the New York Jets after getting traded to the Jets from the Philadelphia Eagles. He came in the first day, did a press conference, who said, whatever, I'm obviously going not verbatim here, but he pretty much said, like, whatever's going to work out with the contract will work out. I'm excited to be here. I just want to know my teammates, the players, and the plays.
Yeah.
And he hasn't showed up since. So who's really lying about this one? Well, there's been a lot of stories about Hassan Reddick lying. No one has really said that the Jets have lied or anything like that. But here's the thing when it comes to Hassan Reddick and the Bucs' pursuitment of him, because obviously this is a Bucs-centric show. The Bucs have about $22 million in cap space right now. After the Tristan Wirfs extension, they have a little bit more room. Shout out to Mike Greenberg and Jackie Davidson for clearing space in that room. And it's crazy to think that the Bucs have all of this money, Adam,
after doing all those deals.
All the deals, the extensions with Winfield and Tristan Wirfs as well. Reddick wants somewhere in the ballpark of $28 million to $30 million. And again, you're not even going to trade for him until you have that contract signed. The Jets would obviously have to give the Bucs permission to speak and negotiate with Hassan Reddick. There's no questioning the production that Reddick has had over, the past couple of years, double-digit sacks, getting after the quarterback. But in my opinion, Adam, if the Bucs, and personally, I think they should wait a little bit. They should certainly inquire, and you never know. A team may just say, hey, I want to get rid of this guy. Give me a 7th-round pick.
Yeah.
Sure, you obviously would go about that. But I think you got to see first what's up with Chris Braswell. How much has Marquise Watts improved? Jose Ramirez drew a couple of holding penalties in that preseason game. I think you still got to see a little bit more what you have with those outside linebackers. But I would be more inclined for the Bucs to go after Matthew Judon, who's looking for a new contract from the Patriots. Even though he's a little bit older, I think Judon probably fits a little bit more into the Bucs defense and just not having to break the bank for him as much as it would for Hassan Reddick.
I just want to say with Hassan Reddick, though, it's such a Jets thing.
It's so Jets.
Like, they trade for him, don't get a deal done. Now he wants to be traded out. But with Reddick, the Jets, they traded a 3rd-round pick to get conditional. But with the way the Bucs have really gone about their past drafts, and those picks are valuable to Jason Light, especially on day 2. Giving up one of those picks for an edge rusher. Last year, Hassan Reddick, there was rumors of him maybe being a Buccaneer in a contract year, but it didn't happen. It's unlikely to happen again. And I think for a little bit, the Bucs, like you said, they should roll with those young pass rushers, really see what they have in them. JTS is still in a contract year. Anthony Nelson's in a contract year. And they really need to see the future of their edge rushers and the rotation that they have. Matthew Judon is interesting because whether it was Baltimore or New England, he really fits in defense as well.
Yeah.
And he's that 3-4 outside linebacker that would fit seamlessly in Todd Bowles' defense. So I think there's a fit there more than Reddick. But both of them are names to keep an eye on as that veteran pass rusher that has had that established production.
Right. And that's the caveat with a lot of this is Judon, I think, is more equipped because outside linebackers are asked to do a little bit more in one, a 3-4 defense, and two, what Todd Bowles is asking of his guys to do, because he does have outside linebackers drop back in coverage. We've seen, we were at the joint training camp practice last year, Adam, in New Jersey, technically, for the Jets and the Bucs. And I don't know if you remember this, but Anthony Nelson had an interception off of Zach Wilson. Now, granted, it was you may have been on the middle field, but you do see kind of surprise moments. Logan Hall, I know he's not an outside linebacker, but Logan Hall had an interception in this training camp a couple of days ago. So I think Judon would be a little bit more equipped to fit into what Tampa Bay does on the defensive side of the football. It clearly adds a better pass rusher right off of the edge. And if you have a Yaya on one side and Judon on another, that is a really, really exciting and tantalizing aspect. And in a way, it reminds me a little bit of trading for a veteran like JPP, as they did back in the day. And JPP was a little bit kind of like the first pillar of the Bucs building.
He was
a team that Tom Brady wanted to, come to. So all really interesting things to think of. But let's get back on track. We are in Jacksonville, as we stated. And just a reminder to everybody, we are going to have shows. Today we're at 4 o'clock. Tomorrow we're back. Sorry, today we started at 5 o'clock. Tomorrow and Thursday, we are back to the 4 o'clock schedule, regularly timed. This was just a little bit of a different thing because we had to get our housing and everything like that. So just behind the scenes stuff that we had to maneuver just a little bit. So tomorrow will be practice, Bucs versus Jaguars. Same with Thursday, and we'll have the show at 4 o'clock. But as we look at this matchup between the Bucs and the Jaguars, and we will recap Monday's practice that we were at as well, which was yesterday in the afternoon. It feels like so much longer ago. Maybe it's because we had a bit of a drive today. But you mentioned before, Adam, the roundtable that is out on pewterreport.com right now with, what we want to see from Tampa Bay. What specifically did you write about that you kind of want to get Tampa Bay to do?
So I'm going to be interested to hear your response because mine's going to be kind of along your lines. What I really want to see with the Buccaneers this week is them continuing to establish that offensive identity. Yeah. And what really stuck out to me, did a story on it came out this morning, was Graham Barton. And Graham Barton, he did really well in the preseason opener, even though he had 18 snaps. I believe he was the second highest Buccaneer in terms of offensive grades by PFF, but he's really excited for the future. And for the Bucs offense, he's going to be a big part of it in establishing that identity along the offensive line. Because you already have Tristan Wirfs, Luke Gedeke, Cody Mauch, as we mentioned. Graham Barton, he's going to play a critical role in being that center of communication. Yeah. And Barton, coming from Duke, Baker Mayfield kind of joked that they have a pretty good academic program at Duke. And Barton is you can kind of tell when you listen to him give a press conference. I mean, he talks for 10 to 12 minutes, gives really thorough answers. And you can tell that there's a football IQ there that Jason Light and the rest of the front office really fell in love with. And so connecting this all back to the offensive identity, I think the Buccaneers need to continue to establish that under Liam Cohen. You kind of saw promising results in the first game with second and third string players, their ability to marry the run and pass to where they get a 5-yard run, a 4-yard run, and then they throw a 20-yard pass, whether that's Jalen McMillan or Rakim Jarrett, whoever it was in that first game. You saw the results and the fruits of their labor, and it really came together in a way that you haven't really seen in a while. And with the offense last year, they had struggles early in the season where there was a whole half where it felt like they couldn't get a first down. Mm-hmm. And so for their ability to do that in that first game, really good signs. They just need to continue to improve and build on that.
By the way, I love this picture of Todd Bowles and then Jason Light and Liam Cohen as well. That would be a good caption this type of thing. What are they talking about? Caption this. But yeah, Adam, going back to that preseason game, the Bengals come out, they score, make it 7-0. They converted a 3rd and 17 on a penalty, and you're thinking, all right, how do the Bucs respond? And they just have a very quick 3 and out with Kyle Trask dumping the ball off. And there's a part of you that's just uh-oh, here we go again. Right? The Bucs offense coming out of the gate slowly, but then they picked it up, and I think with Liam Cohen and, Kyle Trask is very complimentary about him after talking about having Cohen in his headset, how he was like telling them certain reads and certain looks or what to expect. And I think obviously it's one preseason game with none of the major starters. Cody Mauch was in there. Barton obviously was in there for a while after Hainsey got a little bit. And just knowing that they will be able to, it's not going to snowball, I guess. And snowball was a big word last year with Todd Bowles. And I think with Cohen, there's a little bit more of that comfort, that relaxation where, yeah, it was a little bit inconsistent to a degree. And I think that was a little bit more on Kyle Trask and maybe some of the blocking than it necessarily was the sequencing and efficiency by Liam Cohen as he's calling the plays. I mean, for every big throw from Kyle Trask to Raheem Jarrett, that was awesome. And every, big time play that got the receivers down the field, like McMillan made a nice catch. Yeah. Trey Palmer made a nice catch. Those, in my opinion, they came like very sporadically. And I'm not saying every single play has to be a 15 to 25-yard play, but it was kind of like it's almost like getting in an old-fashioned car, and it starts one day and then it doesn't start the next day, and then it starts and you hear the engine kind of going and you're hoping, and then it kind of stops. But to bring it back to Graham Barton, who you were first talking about, I think Barton went off to a good start. I mean, PFF obviously graded him very highly and said he was the highest graded center. You love to see what he did in the touchdown scored by Bucky Irving. And that's the beauty of it too. And that's why I was talking about the run game with, yes, it was great what they did against Cincinnati, but prove it again. Do it again. Consistency is so important with this team. You can run it well for one game, but are you able to do that game in and game out? And yeah, not every time are you going to have 136 yards and, Sean Tucker breaks a great 20-yard run. Yeah. But how do you consistently just get that push forward? And I think, and shout out to Brian Baldinger, who had that video, starting with Graham Barton at center with just kind of some violence, intensity, aggressiveness, and overall just better play than what Robert Hainsey can kind of give you at his best. And that's no knock at Robert Hainsey, because I actually think it's really, really special that the Bucs have a backup on the offensive line that's a 2-year starter and held his own. Like, sure, there were a lot of slip-ups, but, to compare Robert Hainsey to, say, Matt Filer or last year's version of Aaron Stinney, that would not be fair by any means. There's going to be some ups. There's going to be some downs with Graham Barton. But I think right now he's certainly trending up and in the right direction.
Definitely agree with you. And I really like the point that you made when you talk about, off of Baldy's breakdowns, talking about Graham Barton being violent at the point of attack. And you didn't really see that last year. You kind of saw the interior offensive line kind of get pushed back. And with Barton, it was nice and encouraging to see just how he was able to create the holes for the running backs to go through. As you mentioned, Sean Tucker with that 26-yard run, kind of cutting it back to the left side. And overall, I think the run game, as you mentioned, really just needs that consistency. Last year, you kind of saw him take 1 step forward, 2 steps back. You saw that really encouraging game from Rashad. You saw him maybe break a run late in the game. And then the next week, they're running 2 yards a carry, barely getting their feet off the ground, so to speak. And so just building that confidence and continuing that week in and week out, I think is really important.
Yeah, any team can really do it once, but how many games consistently, how many times can you really do it? That is what has me most interested, I think, specifically with the offense and running the football. There's another matchup between the Bucs and the Jaguars specifically that I'm really excited to talk about, like almost as excited as I get when I have a Celsius energy drink, which is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. Of course, the vibes are always high on this show. You got to check out the great vibe flavors that Celsius has, whether it's the Galaxy, Astro, or Cosmic Vibe. I've been having a lot of the Cosmic Vibe. Arctic Vibe is one of my personal favorites as well. I saw the fridge before. Adam's got a boatload of Arctic Vibes ready to go for this week of joint training camp practices. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, like maybe you're in Jacksonville this week and you don't always hang out in Jacksonville as much, you can head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, Target, health and fitness store, Or, Adam, it might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
Once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more.
You always want more.
Yeah, that's true. You do always want more. You can head on over to Amazon, click on that subscribe and save, and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. And seeing is believing. We magically, on the screen right now, have a Celsius Arctic Vibe that was handed to us by SR, who just arrived a couple of minutes ago.
Coming in clutch.
SR will be obviously at training camp with us and on the podcast over the next couple of days as well. We will be live for the preseason game on Saturday too. So a lot of fun stuff coming up for you, Bucs fans. Shout out to Troy Holmes, who says the Bodega Boys with a Z and the 100, keeping it 100 logo. But yeah, the matchup I want to talk about, Adam, as it pertains specifically to the Bucs facing the Jaguars, we've seen a lot of great moments in the secondary from the Buccaneers. And not necessarily, we have seen good moments from Zion McCollum. We've seen it from Jamel Dean. Obviously, there's no concerns about Antoine Winfield Jr. and what he'll do this season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I got to say, there is a lot of young, either undrafted talent or, you know, some of the rookies that they've drafted, like Tyke Smith this year, some second-year guys such as Kayvon Merriweather, that have been doing a really good job this training camp, taking away the football, making plays. I mean, Merriweather with knocking the ball out of T. Higgins, I believe, on that first drive of the game on Saturday. He showed he was ready, made a great tackle up at the line of scrimmage as well. I am very excited to see Merriweather, Tyreek Funderburk, a couple of the other guys, Keenan Isaac, who parlayed his interception on Saturday, spoiler, with an interception in yesterday's practice.
Yeah.
They're going to have some times against Trevor Lawrence, who got paid a lot of money. And yes, we are going to see Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum against Trevor Lawrence. I'm very excited for that. But there is some great competition going on right now, Adam. And unfortunately, they're not going to be able to keep everybody, even on that practice squad.
Yeah.
So who's going to make the big play against a quarterback who got paid a lot of money this offseason? So did Baker Mayfield. We got some highly paid quarterbacks coming up during this training camp practice. But I'd say that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to over the next 2 days.
Definitely. And you talked about like yesterday's practice, Keenan Isaac getting that interception. We're kind of going over all the different cornerbacks that the Bucs have that are competing for positions on the 53-man roster. I mean, you have Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, and you would assume Bryce Hall. Those are the three established corners on the roster. But then you have like a whole other tier of guys really just fighting. And the preseason, the practices, those all come into play. So you see on the screen, Kayvon Merriweather, Keenan Isaac is really going to compete for a spot. Funderburk, Josh Hayes. Rashad Wisdom.
Made some nice plays.
I mean, you have 5-6 guys, and even with the safeties too. Marcus Banks started to come along. So many defensive backs, and you're going up against a quarterback that was highly paid. You're going up against guys like Christian Kirk and guys who can really stretch the field. So that back and forth, that battle, Tyke Smith also mentioned there, the rookie, seeing all of them and their ability to make plays is going to be critical. And then you pair that, we were talking earlier about the outside linebackers, going to be really interested to see how they do too. So many young defenders in Todd Bowles' defense going up against a quarterback really trying to establish himself. I mean, I think that's going to equal some fireworks.
Absolutely, especially because let's remember, as we talked earlier about outside linebackers taking the ball away. You see Marquise Watts attempting to catch a pass there. Let's remember the Bucs and the Jaguars had a great game. If you're a Bucs fan, had a great game last year on Christmas Eve, really beating the brakes off of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's a new season, new teams, different players. But I think a big question for Jacksonville after paying Trevor Lawrence is, how are you going to protect Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah.
I mean, because that was a big thing. Remember, it was surprising that Lawrence even played in that game. He was super banged up before that, and it really came down to the wire for the fact that Trevor Lawrence was going to play in that game. And the Bucs kind of just ate him alive when it came to that Christmas Eve game. This is going to be a little bit different, obviously. Neither quarterback, or I should say quarterbacks, because we're going to see Baker and Kyle Trask and John Wolford as well as we, look a little bit deeper into that backup quarterback competition, which honestly, a little bit fun to see.
Yeah.
Backup running back is one thing, same with like the third or fourth string tight end, but backup quarterback, I think there's a little more flair to it than maybe some of the other positions. But training camp itself, the practices, like what I've seen from Marquise Watts, and let's remember, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka hasn't really practiced in over a week. He does this thing. I honestly don't get why he does it. He puts on the helmet and the shoulder pads. He does like one drill on air, and then that's it. Meanwhile, everyone else that isn't participating is just in a jersey. I get it. Like, he's passionate. He wants to be out there, but I don't really know necessarily what he's proven there. But JTS has been out. Anthony Nelson had a nice day on Monday. However,
he's kind of been limited reps, too.
Yeah, limited for sure. It's really just been Marquise Watts, Jose Ramirez, and Chris Braswell. And I think that's really a big-time question in joint training camp. And for those guys as well, what's going to happen on Saturday? Because with the exception of Ramirez drawing some of those penalties, I think it was a little uninspiring, I would say, from the outside linebackers. And, Todd Bowles has been big to say about, it's one game and, we're not going to make all these rash decisions based on, one performance from certain guys. And he was kind of talking about that with other positions, especially the backup quarterback position. But, I think that pertains to outside linebacker as well. It's not the end of the world that they didn't get to the quarterback a ton. But at what point do we say this is just an anomaly or this is just the outside linebacker room? Because it's kind of 2, potentially even 3 years where outside of like one guy, you're just not getting the production that you want to see.
Yeah, you're not getting the production. And with one preseason game already in the books, there's really only 2 more chances for these young guys to really stake a claim for playing time. I mean, you look at the outside linebacker depth chart going into these preseason games, and you had like 5 or 6 guys really competing for playing time where you're going to have 2 starters. But again, Tryon-Shoyinka, he's in his 5th year. Anthony Nelson, he's in a contract year. You want to see these young guys come in, really take that next step. And it's going to take some time, but you kind of want to see those flashes. And outside of, again, Jose Ramirez making a couple little plays to get holding penalties, you didn't see that pass rush. And Todd Bowles, he didn't do a lot of blitzes in the first game. He wanted to see that 4-man pass rush. Those guys generate natural pressure without having to do a bunch of different creative looks, and it just wasn't happening. And I mean, these are backup Bengals offensive linemen and they just weren't creating that pressure. So they only have 2 more opportunities. This week in Jacksonville is going to be crucial for them to, I mean, they're going to go up against, I think, Anton Harrison, the right tackle. I mean, the Jaguars, they don't have a bad offensive line by any means. So they're going to have to go out there. They're going to have to compete every day and show that they're getting better. Otherwise, they're going to go down the totem pole.
Let's stick with Braswell for just a moment, because I think he's in a very intriguing spot. We talked about Yaya Diaby before and, him hopefully being ready by the start of the regular season. I think he's on track, but I don't really want to guarantee anything until we see the Bucs at Raymond James Stadium taking on the Washington Commanders. But Braswell's in a very intriguing spot because JTS, we don't know how long this injury is going to linger. And, Todd Bowles did say on Monday that a lot of the guys that are out right now, whether it's Savassi Dennis, Kalijah Cansey, JTS, it shouldn't impact them for week 1 of the regular season. With that said, Todd Bowles is not a doctor. I mean, I'm sure he's listening to the doctors.
Dr. Bowles?
Yeah, Dr. Bowles. DB. He was a DB.
Yeah. I like it.
But we've also seen Todd Bowles, and every coach does this, so I'm not singling out Todd Bowles. Sometimes they're not always as spot-on accurate with the media, understandably so, as they are, a little bit behind closed doors. So with JTS kind of lingering out there and Anthony Nelson being what he is, Braswell is in a spot where if he plays well throughout the rest of this training camp, heading into, after Labor Day and the start of the regular season, he could play his way into a spot where he's either starting on the other side of Yaya Diaby, or when I say taking snaps away, I mean it for the betterment of the Bucs, but unfortunately for Nelson and JTS, cutting into the snaps of those two players, or he could kind of just be a spot outside linebacker that comes in when, maybe Nelson is out that game or JTS is out that game and you want to give the other guys a little bit of a break, or, maybe the Bucs are up by 17 points and you can kind of get him a couple of snaps. I want Braswell to break into that spot of maybe not a starter, but a guy that's in the rotation more than some of the other guys. I just don't know. It's like one day he has a really poor performance, and the next day you're like, wow, that's why the Bucs drafted him in the second round. And maybe that's just being a rookie. But when we've seen other guys be so consistent as a player, either as a rookie or a second-year player, I don't know if Braswell has it just yet.
I don't think so either. He doesn't have it just yet. You can still see some of like the rawness in his game. But when you look at it, what Todd Bowles really liked about Braswell going into training camp is his physicality. And I mean, you saw that on film at Alabama. And coming into the NFL, after playing at Alabama, you would expect him to be more NFL ready. And I think right now it's just about getting acclimated to the NFL. But you kind of see it in practice where he has those flashes where he takes on that sled and he's going at it. And you're like, man, he can really do some damage. Or going up against offensive linemen, getting past them. But right now there's that inconsistency of being a young player. So him taking that next step, if he has a really good week with the joint practices in the preseason game, he's going to fight for that number 2 outside linebacker role. And I think the Bucs are expecting and hoping for that going forward, that it's really Diaby and Braswell heading into 2025 and beyond. But right now, it's just about getting him settled in and with the other guys kind of falling in line with him.
Maybe Braswell just needs to kind of ease his mind a little bit, take the edge off just a bit. I know one way that I'm going to ease my mind is by going on a cruise, and specifically the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr!
Arr!
That's right. Join the fun with hundreds of Bucs fans on the 3rd annual Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, which sets sail March 7th through the 10th in 2025 on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. This is a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. Last year's cruise had Yaya Diaby, Rashad White, Luke Gedeke, Cade Otton, Jamel Dean, Christian Izien, Greg Gaines, and Jordan Whitehead is confirmed for this year, along with Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, the voice of the Buccaneers, Gene Deckerhoff. That wasn't an impression of Gene Deckerhoff, just wanted to amplify it a little bit more. Many others as well. Even more players are expected next year, including a guest appearance by Derek Brooks. Also, Pewter Report broke the news that Mike Allstott, the A-Train, is coming aboard. I know normally he's a train guy, but he's coming aboard the Celebrity Silhouette ship for the Bucs cruise as well. So you can go say hello and meet Mike Allstott, because there's going to be photo and autograph opportunities with the players, a raise the flag sail away party, VIP parties with the players, special interviews, a water volleyball challenge, which admittedly I'm most looking forward to, a Bucs trivia contest, and fun games and more. So reserve your cabin now. There is still time to reserve your cabin for the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips are all included, with a $200 deposit per person. And that is refundable until August 16th. So it's the 13th right now. You can still book your trip, have a night or two to sleep over it and think about it. And if you want to change your mind, which, to be honest, I don't know why you would, but you can still get that refund up until August 16th. So visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's 1-800-975-7112. All right, Adam, I know we've looked a lot forward, but we also have to look backwards just a little bit because the Bucs did have practice yesterday. It was an afternoon practice, no fans in the stands. Unfortunately, we do like when the fans are there. We've had some great conversations with a lot of awesome Bucs fans and Pewter people. And speaking of Pewter people, we have a brand new member. Shout out to Mac, M-A-C. Mac just became a new YouTube and Pewter Report member. Thank you so much for your support, Mac. We really appreciate that. Hopefully, we can see you in person at some point at a Bucs practice or a game. So typically, the Bucs training camp practices so far have been in the morning, which has been fine. I thought it was nice to mix it up a little bit. Yeah. You know, the Bucs have some 1 o'clock games. They begin the season at 4 o'clock. Shout out, Mac says, gifted 10 Pewter Report memberships. Appreciate that, Mac. You are the best. The Bucs also have a Monday night game, a Sunday night game. So they play Thursday night. So they're playing all different times. So I do think it is important. Yeah. Shout out to these 10 gifts, Mac. Thank you so much. So I thought it was great that the Bucs had a little bit of a different practice and really just mixed things up because they had some days off and they had a game. Then obviously they're off the next day, practice. Then they're off today, and then they go and practice again over the next 2 days. So I think it's important. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about having a routine. Routines are great, and it helps you kind of get through the monotony of each day. But also, you got to be on your toes and ready to expect anything. I mean, who would have thought that Baker Mayfield would have got hurt against the Colts, and bam, Kyle Trask is coming in for that 1 to 2 plays that he was in for before Baker came back in. But let's talk about some of the big takeaways from yesterday's practice, Adam. Lavonte David was really in the center of it.
Yeah, he was. And at the beginning, it wasn't that promising. There was a couple opportunities where he had to get some interceptions. There was a couple plays where he was so close. One in particular, Baker Mayfield was dropping back, throwing across the middle. Lavonte David was so close to cutting it off and making the play on the ball. So you're like, oh, man, Lavonte David not having the best of days. But then he's like, you know what? I'm going to exact some revenge on the quarterback. I'm going to get after him. He notched 2 sacks. And it was really encouraging to see the inside linebacker getting involved up the middle, getting after the quarterback. Even though he's a 13-year vet, 34 years old, he still looks like 10 years younger when he's out there on the field. So thought Lavonte, he came back around, bounced back like a veteran would, had a really solid day. But another observation that we were kind of talking about was the coaches being more vocal on the sidelines. Yes. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of maybe the fans not being there and the guys just being more like themselves, just them involved and kind of building that brotherhood. But you saw Liam Cohen out there kind of barking, being more vocal, like, hey, guys. Yeah. And Kevin Carberry, I remember there was
offensive line coach.
Yeah, there was one play in particular where they were kind of running screen passes and he's getting on Graham Barton, just kind of encouraging him and building up those guys. And that's what you want to see, especially where all that talk about offensive linemen, having that new offensive line coach kind of being in sync with Liam Cohen. I think that's an underrated aspect of this offense is the chemistry that those two have and how they're building about that offensive line. So those coaches being more vocal, but also Lavonte David still being Lavonte David. Those were my biggest takeaways from practice.
Yeah. First of all, shout out to JB for becoming a member, using one of the 10 gifts from Mac. So once again, thank you so much, Mac. And thank you, JB, for becoming a Pewter Report YouTube member, Mac, in a very joyous move. So once again, thank you so much. As Earthly God says, nice, Big Mac. Shout out, Big Mac. A couple things. I want to go back to Lavonte David, and then I will address the coaches because it was all very cool to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Lavonte missing 1 interception. It was really like 3 that he missed. So the first one you had mentioned where he was running in stride. He read the play he read Baker Mayfield's eyes. And it wasn't even like Baker really, telegraphing it. It was more Lavonte knew where the play was going to Chris Godwin, cut right across. There was a couple plays later, very similar, but Baker was looking for Mike Evans this time. And I would say it was about 10 yards further down the field than the pass to Chris Godwin was. So a little bit of a tweak on the play. It was middle of the field, but like the left half hash marks, if that gives the proper visual. And this time, a little bit tough to say exactly what would have happened in the game because Levante and Mike came very close to colliding with each other.
So you want to take a step back.
And they didn't. And I think Levante had the right frame of mind of, hey, we're two of the best players on the team, captains of this team. Let's not collide with each other. Mike ends up making the catch, but I am curious if that's an opponent. I think Levante gets the shoulder while they're still in the air. Shout out to Kevin Tomas becoming a YouTube member. Thank you, Kevin. And so Mike makes the play. A lot of surprising stuff. The last one was probably the most agonizing. And I had a good close-up of it because I was actually walking over. So at this point, it was 7-on-7s, but red zone. And they were at the end zone that's like closest to the building and the facility itself. Not the practice facility, but like the actual facility where we do press conferences and things like that. So 7-on-7s is going on in that end zone right there. And then the offensive linemen and defensive linemen were going through their pass rushing drills at the same time. So I was actually walking over to go to the O linemen and D linemen, but I was able to kind of like watch both. Or like a pass rush would go and then 7-on-7 would go. And the Bucs were defense was in zone. Levante was like right at the line where the end zone is. And Baker just fired in this pass. I can't recall which receiver it was, so I apologize. But he fires in this pass. Levante dives, comes like a millimeter away, like an inch away from intercepting the football. And the receiver catches it. It's a touchdown. Levante, once again, is like, I cannot believe this is happening. But we know how Baker Mayfield loves to trash talk. Baker starts acting like he's got a fishing pole, and he's doing that Geico commercial where he's like, you got to be quicker than that. You got to be quicker than that. But he says that, but he goes, you got to be quicker than that, Levante. And he kind of like said it twice. As far as trash talking goes,
that's up there.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
It was absolutely hilarious. I did feel bad for Levante David. And Levante has done plenty of incredible things for the Buccaneers. It's awesome that at age 34, he is still playing at such a high level. If we are going to tweak Levante David slightly, because he's not perfect and we have to be real about ourselves, Levante, over the past couple of seasons, has struggled specifically catching the football for an interception. He can still knock the ball out. He can still blitz and get after the quarterback. But he hasn't had an interception over the last 3 seasons.
He has not.
His last interception came in the Super Bowl winning 2020 season. This is a little bit of an issue. Now, will it sink the Bucs season? No, I do not. And of course, Levante goes and makes up for it with 2 sacks later on in practice. So he's still impacting the game one way or another. As Max says, LMAO in response to Baker's trash. It really was great. It's one of those, I wish I had it on video. We obviously couldn't record at that point. I'm hoping the Bucs put it out. They probably won't because they
should just put Baker doing that.
Yeah, because it was like A+ Baker trash talking material. And you know what? I don't know what other podcasts have really been talking about it, but you heard it on the Pewter Report podcast. Hezo813, another member, says, I fear Levante won't get the recognition he deserves as a first ballot Hall of Famer after his career is over. 99 or
number 99.
On number 99 on NFL players list is blasphemous. Every year I hold the top 100 players list in lesser regard.
Yeah. The lightest grain of salt.
Yeah, because it's at this point, it's kind of on that Pro Bowl level, where Antoine Winfield Jr. didn't make the Pro Bowl, but he gets all pro.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes has won the last 2 Super Bowls. He's the best quarterback in the league. And his former teammate, Tyreek Hill, is the number 1 guy. I don't necessarily understand it, but it's players voting. They vote for their friends. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the mantra for Levante, just, not getting the credit.
On the topic of that NFL 100, you have Bobby Wagner. That's still number 53 on there. And that doesn't make sense because at this point, it's more name than really production. Yeah. And I don't know, Raheem Mostert being number 60, Jordan Love being above Joe Burrow, what world
Rodgers on the list, even though he played 4 games.
But shout out AA Ron.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to him. Yeah. He only played 4 snaps. How's he really on the list? So, hey, I understand Bucs fans' anger with it, but the Bucs have bigger goals than Levante being on a specific list. But to get back to what you said next about practice, Adam, it was cool to see Liam Cohen and Kevin Carberry coach up the guys. And I want to specify, it wasn't like they were berating anybody or even like screaming at them. Sometimes they got a little bit louder, and it didn't matter who it was. Like, obviously Liam Cohen's always coaching up Baker Mayfield and the other quarterbacks, but he was coaching up Ryan Miller on. It was legitimately a walkthrough. It's like one of those where you're going in slow-mo, and Liam Cohen wanted a route run a specific way, slant, to the point that Cohen went out and ran it himself to show specifically the nuances and the details that he is looking for. There were several times on Monday's practice where before the ball's even snapped, he goes, "Can we get a timeout? Can we get a timeout?" And brings the whole offense in and, started talking about whatever. So he was very vocal in that aspect of it. Carberry, you mentioned him coaching Graham Barden. That was kind of later on in practice. Early on, there was a play. It was like a short pass, but the line was supposed to get up the field. And Carberry just goes, "Cody," talking to Cody Mack. He goes, Cody, you got to pick it up. Cody, you got to step up." And again, not berating him, just trying to really get the point across. And, these are new coaches coming in. You never know how everybody's going to necessarily react to it. And I think they're going to get their message across. I mean, the offense is in a good spot. I can't see great just yet. Offensive line, as far as running the football in terms of goals that they wanted to achieve this year of improving the run game.
I think they're getting there.
They haven't accomplished the goal yet, but they are off to the proper start for that. Another thing of practice that was quite noticeable, and again, makes you go, what's going on here? For the first time in all of training camp, we saw two players with black non-contact jerseys on. You don't see that as much. You obviously see the quarterback orange creamsicle jerseys, and then the red and the white for offense and defense. However, the two players that were in the non-contact, one a little bit worrisome at the time, the other kind of encouraging.
Yeah.
Jalen McMillan was in one of the non-contact jerseys. And when you see that, you're like, oh my goodness, he's been the star in terms of newcomers at camp. Why is he in a non-contact jersey? I will say, though, he participated in all the punt returns that he was normally doing in practice. He ran routes with the wide receivers, and he was in a lot of the 11-on-11 offense. Cameron Johnson, we haven't seen in over a week. It was great to see him return. Still looks just as fast. After practice, Todd Bowles said Jalen McMillan was just feeling a little bit sore, and Bowles didn't want anybody touching him. And he said Johnson did a couple of things and is progressing. So what does that mean for when they play the Jaguars tomorrow? We don't necessarily know yet, but something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. And kind of branching off Cameron Johnson, I have a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
When you look at, he was really impressive in the first couple of weeks of training camp, and you're like, he's maybe fighting for that number 6 wide receiver role. If he doesn't play in the Jacksonville game, and you only have the Miami game to really base your valuation on Cameron Johnson of, do you still keep him on the 53-man, or do you put him on the practice squad and maybe risk another team claiming him? Because there's a lot of promise there, and it begs the question, who would be the returner if it isn't Cameron Johnson?
Well, I mean, we kind of already saw some of the guys return in the last game. Bucky Irving was back there. I think Sean Tucker is, of course, an option. And then you had Trey Palmer returning the punt. So in terms of kickoff and punt return, I think the Bucs will have that covered regardless of Cameron Johnson. It's a very intriguing question and an interesting point because, yes, he was very exciting, but that third preseason game, and again, we're under the assumption, hypothetically, that he doesn't play against Jacksonville. Well, Todd Bowles said he's leaning towards playing the starters in the third game. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to play all 4 quarters or anything like that. But that means you're going to get less time of Cameron Johnson. I think it's really difficult to justify the potential of what someone might be when they've been injured for a majority of training camp. He's exciting. I think you got to try to sneak him onto the practice squad because, how is it fair to some of the other guys that have played well too? It's not like it's Cameron Johnson. Everybody else is so completely below him.
Yeah.
There's been other guys making plays. I mean, Kyle Trask teaming up with Cody Thompson after he was teaming up with Sterling Shepard. Cody Thompson, if he's getting more looks and he's making plays and things like that, he doesn't have the speed that Cameron Johnson does, but can't you argue that Thompson has the durability that Johnson doesn't have? It's it's an interesting thing to look at for this group overall, especially because you make it to the active roster, you get a little bit more money than you would if you were on the practice squad. And of course, if you want to manage your money, whether you're on the active roster or the practice squad, the best people to help you with managing your money is Muni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude,
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Muni Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you with a number of things, whether it's advisory services, legacy and retirement planning, insurance services, annuities, and sales and trading. If you want to set up a college account for your child, if they plan to go to college, you can do that as well. And yes, while they're in Tampa and in Colorado, they're really all across the United States. You could be in Jacksonville, you can be in Dallas, you can be in Oregon if you wanted to. Maybe you want to pay some homage to Bucky Irving or whatever it may be. So check out Muni Financial. Give them a call today. Get a free consultation and see how they can help you with your money. That is Muni Financial. Get a free consultation. Doesn't hurt to do so, and you'd be helping out our sponsors. So shout out to Muni Financial. All right, guys, we have a big week ahead of us. Just a reminder again, the Bucs and Jaguars will be practicing against each other tomorrow on Wednesday, and on Thursday, we will have Pewter Report podcast also on Wednesday and Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern. We're back to our regular time at 4 o'clock for tomorrow and Thursday. Then Saturday, we will have a Pewter post-game show after the Bucs and Jaguars play. We will be live in Jacksonville from it. We typically try to do it at some point after we hear from Todd Bowles and usually the quarterback after the game. May have to move some things around because we will either be doing it live from the Jaguar Stadium or we will have to head back to where we are staying in Jacksonville to get the show rolling. So anyway, in the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment on this as well.
Matt,
what's up?
We're less than 35 subscribers away from 15,000.
Yeah, Adam's getting choked up just thinking about it. We would love to get to 15,000 before the preseason game. Maybe we'll even get it by tonight before the Bucs play the Jaguars tomorrow. Of course, if you want to as well, you can become a channel member on Pewter Report's YouTube. You get special badges and other bonuses and benefits if you want to become a YouTube channel member at Pewter Report. So a lot of great things there. We appreciate all of your support, and we appreciate everybody that has become a member so far. So please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well, as we got tons and tons of content coming out on Pewter Report's YouTube channel. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.